I just want to say Boise, Idaho is booming. 291's got more work than we know what to do with. All of you brothers and sisters out there that travel in for work, we'd love to have you. We appreciate you. You're helping us man work that we couldn't man without you. Be patient with the staff out there. And for all the apprentices out there, your union meetings are poorly attended. Get your class together and go vote for whatever you want. I guarantee you'll win a vote.
That's important. Real quick, do you, because I know every state's a little different. I know Ohio, for instance, doesn't have it, but do you have to have a, like an Idaho license to work in the state?
Yes, Idaho has a state electrical license. You have to have the license. They have a reciprocation process with about a dozen different states where if you have a license from that state, they will grant you a license. They also have what's called a provisional, where you can qualify to take the test. And if you qualify to take the Idaho state test, they'll give you a provisional that's good for 6 months until you take the test. You fail it once, you get another 6 months, so you've got about a year to get that test passed. We have an amazing brother in our local, Daryl Nelson, who does test prep on his own time on Saturdays at his house, at the hall, awesome. Wherever it takes to help make sure that brothers and sisters can pass that test. So Idaho is a licensed state, and we don't ever intend on letting that change.
Everyone, this is Noah from Spanky the Sparky. Today we have two very special guests, Mr. Jason Taylor, the President and Assistant Business Manager, and Mr. Jared Melton, part of their membership development in IBEW Local 291 in Boise, Idaho. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Good, Noah. Thanks for having us on, man.
You're doing well.
Good. Like I was saying before we started recording, thank you for taking the time to do the episode. I believe these conversations are important for not only our current membership, but any future membership. Transparency is key, and if we help either one individual that's currently not in the trade make the transition into the trade from this episode, that's cool. And same thing, if they see one of these episodes and like, yeah, the trade's probably not for me, I think we've done our job. So I think both are equally important. But before we jump into questions, I don't care which one of you wants to start, but either Jason or Jared, if you guys want to give just a brief synopsis about yourself before we begin.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, my name is Jared Melton. I'm on the membership development team down here in Boise, Idaho. I'm also on the executive board. I got in the IBEW at 21 years old. That was 9 years ago. And I was just looking for a job. I found a career. And then ultimately the IBEW changed my life. So I started talking about it enough that I got a job doing it. So
that's awesome.
And I'm Jason Taylor. I organized in on an organizing campaign in 2015. Been on staff for almost as long as I've been a union member. Our local expanded quite a bit with that organizing campaign. We gained almost 700 folks to represent.
That's awesome.
In a telecom type of unit that was not traditional for the local. So became a union member in August of 16. Came on staff December of 16 and been on staff ever since. So I've served as an assistant business manager, as a professional and industrial organizer, as a business rep, on the executive board, and now as the president of the local.
That's awesome. And before we jump into anything, I want to say I've heard it from different, I guess, everyone from leadership roles down to even like journeymen and whatnot, but they always say it doesn't matter if you have the title of an organizer, everyone in the union is an organizer. So, but to kick off the questions, Jared, if you had to start over today knowing everything you know now, would you still choose the trade? Why or why not?
I absolutely would. I feel like just a dumb kid from Canyon County, Idaho that hit the lottery. You know, when I was getting in, I was looking for a job, and then all of a sudden, all this AI, data center, semiconductor work started kicking off, and I was already in the industry. So 100%, if I could change things, I probably would have joined it earlier.
I actually started out non-union before I made the jump into the union. Before I ever started the electrical trade as a whole, I actually went the college route. So I have a lot of different perspectives, but kind of with the whole mention of starting sooner, that's probably my, well, not probably, that is my only regret to this point is I didn't start sooner. So it's been interesting, especially with the data centers. Every local is going to be a little different with their scope of work. We have had a lot of, at least in Columbus, a lot of hospital work, but data centers have kind of overtaken, and right now it's just kind of money galore. If you throw a dart on a map, you you can be working anywhere in America through the IBEW, or most places anyway, so it's been pretty cool. I also want to put an emphasis on, you mentioned this right off the rip, you were looking for a job, you found a career. I think that's probably the most important thing with any, not an electrical trade, but a union trade, is it's not just a job, it's a long-term career. And with any career, there's going to be ups and downs, but you got to look at it from a career perspective and not just a job. So that's pretty cool. And then Jason, you didn't just join the union, you helped build it through organizing. What's the real difference between a workplace that's organized and one that isn't, for those that don't know?
I think the primary difference is you have a process to address your workplace. You have an opinion, you have the right to raise your voice, you have the right to vote, you have the right to join with your fellow workers in bargaining what your workplace looks like. And I like to say it's an imperfect process, but at least we have one.
That's
and
very
I think
true.
that's a tremendous difference. My children are headed for union jobs, and
That's awesome.
I can't be more thankful enough for that. So I think that's incredibly important. It's important to have a little skin in the game.
That's very true.
I think you feel powerless when you're dealing with employers outside of a union environment. I think it changes the way you deal with your employer. It changes your decision-making process. I think you tend to endure more than you should.
That's true.
So I think it's a good thing to have for your mental health, for your ability to get up and go to work every day, and just a drastic difference between the two.
And I will say, you mentioned decision making, especially I guess working non-union, and that was something I didn't have working non-union. There wasn't no decision making on my behalf. It was always at the discretion of whoever I was working under, like my foreman or whatever you want to classify them as. So it was very interesting, to say the least. You didn't really have a voice. It was, this is the way, you don't like it, kick rocks and go home. So in the union, you do have a voice, which is a very nice thing to have, especially as a collective whole.
Agreed.
You two work closely together in organizing and education. Where do you actually see things differently, and how does that make the local stronger instead of weaker? Because sometimes, I'm sure there's some headbutting. I mean, even if good friends
Frequently. I'll say we both bring a different perspective to the table. I think it helps that we share values, even when we differ in our opinions. I think, how does it make it stronger? I think that without disagreement, you're just surrounded by an echo. And if
I like
all we
that.
ever do is agree on things, then I think I don't think you're growing.
That's
I
fair.
think it's stagnating. I don't think you are actually accomplishing anything if everybody is on the same page. Now, you march forward when a decision is made. You come to terms with that's the decision, and you operate in that type of way.
Yeah.
But I think until you get to that decision-making point, you have to be fiery and passionate in your disagreements, or you won't be fiery and passionate in your advocacy and your path forward. So
That's
Yeah,
very
what
true.
I like to add on, is there's not a decision that's put forward out of this union hall that hasn't been, talked about, and sometimes in passionate lights. I mean, I think even yesterday we got at each other, raising voices. And, the point is, we're going to argue in here and have a unified front out there, so that way the best decision and the direction moving forward is address the membership.
That's true, and I guess with headbutting, especially if you guys can remain on the same playing ground or have the same sort of thought process, that'll just, it ultimately takes an idea and can push it up and progresses it into something even better. So there's never no such thing as a bad idea, but you guys kind of counteract and push everything forward. So that's pretty cool, especially when the same goal's in mind. There's a lot of noise online. I wouldn't say just online. I would say throughout the entire U.S. right now, especially with the current administration in power. What's the biggest lie being told that people are actually starting to believe about the unions?
I don't know if there's anything new that I would recognize as part of our current reputation. I think the same type of issues we've had to work to overcome in the past are persistent. I think one of the biggest differences in our world now, as opposed to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, is that everybody's voice is significantly more amplified than it, I think sometimes than it should be.
That's true.
Sometimes the loudest person in the room gets the most attention, but that doesn't mean that's the smartest person in the room.
That's
so I think we
very
have
true.
an awful lot of reputational issues that we have to address, from how we engage in politics
Yep.
to how we represent our members. All of those things are highlighted more significantly now when it comes to politics and things like I say you'd have to ask me, you'd have to give me a specific topic on who I want to deal with, whether it's the left side of the fence or the right side of the fence, and that changes, and I think that's important for our membership to know. But I think the most persistent lie is told is that we are universally in support of the Democrat side of the political spectrum in the United States. If you ask me, I don't think we can do anything better than to expand and look at nuclear technologies, and that's not a popular opinion on the left, right? So if we're dealing with nuclear policy or things of that nature, I want to talk to the Republican side of the House. So I think that persistent lie really hurts us a lot. We don't do a ton to address it.
I would agree with that. And I'm not going to name drop anyone, but there are many people I've talked to throughout different trades, different locals that have those same perspectives. It's very interesting, but I think you nailed it on the head. Jared, is there anything you have to build off that, or do you think he kind of answered for you?
You know what? I'm really proud of the labor movement right now. I think there's a lot of flack being thrown at us. But I think you got a lot of young folks, especially young folks, that are standing up and they're saying, hey, we need to form a union. I mean, even some of the folks that make our coffee.
That's what I was...
The more we do that, the more we talk about union, the more that we're not afraid of what folks have to say, the stronger we're going to be. Because I tell any journeyman that I give a business card to, I say, hey, if this isn't the route for you, go out and get a raise. You know, tell them the information I just showed you, scan the QR code. And if you don't end up coming over, at least get a raise, because that helps us, because ultimately we want to build up the industry.
That's true. That's never heard it phrased like that, but that's a very unique, and I actually agree with that thought process. That's interesting. That's in my opinion progressive. It's a different way of being progressive, but progressive nonetheless. That's pretty cool. You've sat at the table for multiple contracts. Walk us through a moment where negotiations were going sideways and what actually turned it around. And that's something I feel like a lot of members, I think they take the contract negotiations for granted. They just see the final result. They don't actually see all the behind the scenes, which I think would be eye-opening for a lot of members. But yeah, I guess where did things go sideways and what actually turned it around?
I'll talk about our most recent organizing win along with the first contract negotiation with Aspen Trees. It was a unit of about 90. I think Jared and I are both pretty proud of that. We went from day one to recognition in a little under 6 weeks with 90 folks across 3 different locations, 3 different laydown yards. That's significantly quick.
Yeah.
I will say negotiations went south. It took us almost a year and a half to get a first contract. So of that year and a half, only 5 weeks of it was actually building the union. So
Wow.
When it came time for negotiations, you really have to balance the needs of an awful lot of people. And a lot of people have a significant opinion about the direction of their workplace, the direction of their CBAs. Especially when you have a primary issue or something that the folks are really chasing after and you can't get there, you really have to work with your bargaining team. You have to take members to the bargaining committee. They have to sit at the table. They have to deal with their employer, because if they don't, then you're not creating the trust that they need to talk to their peers about that contract, to ratify that contract. And I think where it stopped for us with some healthcare issues. Primary issue for the workplace, they really wanted a significant increase in the healthcare cost for the company, and in a 3-year deal we weren't able to get there. So you have to be flexible. You have to look at what the workplace needs. You have to come up with a plan for not the bargaining you're trying to get through, but the bargaining, the next round of bargaining, the bargaining round after that. So instead of doing a 3-year deal, which is pretty typical in the industry, pretty typical in every industry, we did a 1-year deal. And we got back to the table right away. So we were able to transition to a different concept about midway through to say, listen, we're not going to get it, but let's take a bite at that apple as quickly as we possibly can. I don't think we made any significant sacrifices to get there. There was a little bit of a stroke of luck when it came to the service agreement the trees had with the utility.
Mm-hmm.
Their contract was a year, so going back to negotiations actually benefited both parties. So I just say in negotiations you have to be flexible. You have to not be so tied to one concept or so tied to your strategy that you're not nimble enough to move off of that and try to do something midway through where you're blowing up a 3-year deal to go to a 1-year deal, and you have to be able to do that. If you can't, you probably shouldn't be at a bargaining table.
I would agree with that, and I think that applies to just about anything in life, being flexible. A lot of people are pretty just set in their ways, willing to butt heads, but being flexible is key to, like you just said, negotiating and bargaining, but I think that applies to just about anything in life, and I think the world would be the world as a whole would be a lot more prosperous if there was more flexibility involved in everything. So that's a pretty unique way of looking at things. In a right-to-work state, the system is designed to weaken unions. What's the real strategy to not just survive that, but still grow?
I think the biggest thing is just inviting yourself in, be a part of the community. When you go out knocking doors, understand that you're representing a belief, a system, a union that not a lot of folks have exposure to, and they just don't know yet. So some things that we have done is participate in our 4th of July parade here in Boise.
It's pretty cool.
You know, do positive stuff for the community. Ultimately, we're all here. We're fathers, we're mothers, we're brothers, we're sisters, and kind of show them that we're not the devil, right?
Yeah.
We're just people, and we believe that people should be taken care of in the world.
I agree with that. Is there, I guess, that you're aware of, is there any sort of right-to-work legislation currently going in Idaho that maybe hasn't passed that you guys might know about?
Nothing currently. The right-to-work laws in Idaho were passed in, I believe, 1983 or 1984, and we've been right-to-work ever since. We maintain a really healthy percentage of our workforce. Our members are members of the local. We don't have a significant number of folks that don't pay dues, and we do that by providing value. I think the biggest thing, or the biggest mistake that unions make when it comes to membership is not asking people to join the union directly, not presenting folks in a way that they can see themselves.
Yeah.
We have a wide variety of units, from units that are significantly older populations, female populations, male populations, and when you're talking to those folks, they have to see themselves in their union. If it's,
That's true.
Jared and Jason going and talking to one of our call centers where a significant portion of the population is sisters, they don't necessarily see themselves in Jared and Jason when we're talking to them about being a part of the union,
Mm-hmm.
about doing those type of things. So you have to make sure you build activists to help make sure that the union is represented in a real rounded way, so that everybody sees that we're trying to promote leadership from every aspect and every bargaining unit that we have. So building a diverse union is important to combating right to work.
I would agree with that.
And
That's very
onto
true.
that real quick, our members kick ass, man.
That's
They're so pro IBEW, and that really helps, especially on the membership development side. If we get a guy that's been talked to by 4 of his buddies and they're like, the IBEW is fantastic, you're ridiculous for not joining, it makes membership development's side of the equation a lot easier. And so a lot of credits to our members of always talking IBEW, not afraid to be IBEW.
And that goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning, is everyone has a chance to be an organizer, and you don't need the organizing title to be an organizer. And I think a lot of members forget that. I think, I hate to say it, but I feel like, and it's not just in the union, I think it's in everything in life. Everyone's become so individualized. It's just myself and not screw the rest, but a lot of people are just screw the rest. This is all about me. And I do think it does happen in the unions, but not as much. But every day's a good day to be an organizer. And yeah, it's very important, especially as we progress on with administrations that really don't align with at least the union values as a whole. So yeah, it's a everyday battle. If you strip politics out of it all and you just look at the ground level, who's actually winning jobs right now in your area and why?
I mean, we're kicking ass. We got a lot of work going on right now, and we're blessed with a bunch of it. We got a Micron super fab, we got another data center, and a lot more work coming. And right now, my personal opinion, if you want to be an electrician, be a union electrician.
I fully agree with that.
We'll win a lot of jobs.
Right. I think we're gaining ground when it comes to who's winning jobs right now. I know you said to strip politics out of it, but it would be remiss to not mention that a lot of that has to do with
That's true.
Policies that are put in place. Everybody's divided on where who gets the credit for major projects.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is, aside from the red and blue side of the political spectrum, public policy matters.
That's true.
And whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're an independent, a libertarian, a Green Party, whatever it is, that public policy impacts our ability to get and maintain good jobs. The Micron Superfab is going to employ thousands and thousands of people in the IBEW. First year apprentice, day one, 18 years old, is going to make $110,000 at Micron. That's
awesome.
Day one at 18 years of age. So it matters. Public policy matters. So we're gaining ground in our neck of the woods, and whether that has to do with state policy, federal policy, whatever it is, it matters. So I just encourage everybody to pay attention to how it impacts us, and we're gaining ground. We're happy around here, man. It comes with its own challenges, but too many people at work isn't a bad thing.
That's very true. And from your, I guess, understanding or knowledge, how long do you anticipate the Micron data center in specific to last in the area?
The Micron project itself is a semiconductor facility. We have 3 other data centers that are either being built or in the permitting stage. We have several hospital towers that are in the that are being built. One of them in the permitting stage. One of them's got steel going in the air.
That's awesome.
We have massive amounts of projects being slated for our neck of the woods. So Micron's massive. Micron, it's really hard to tell how long it's going to last. But we've been out at Micron for 35 years, and we'll be at Micron for another 100 years if they'll have us. We do a good job for Micron, so it is not just their semiconductor facility that we're building. We take care of their existing facilities. So Micron is a long-term partner of IBEW 291, and we genuinely appreciate their partnership because it keeps good jobs, good union jobs, and it keeps our members working. So it's always a long-term project with Micron. We expect years on the semiconductor facility. But more importantly, it's a long-term relationship that we value and want to maintain.
That's awesome. And yeah, relationships are obviously in every facet of life are very important. And as a organization, having a positive relationship with either another business, another organization goes a long way. And it sounds like you guys have done that to this point with Micron in specific, and hopefully that continues on. That's definitely a big positive. Where are we actually losing people right now? Apprentices dropping out, guys turning out and leaving, or just general disengagement? And what do you believe is the real reason for that? Because I guess these numbers might be a little skewed, but on the union side of things, I was doing some research, and just the apprenticeship or the apprentice side of things, IBEW apprenticeships have, as a collective whole throughout all of them, about under a 60% completion rate. Obviously, that's going to vary local to local. But what do you think is the real issue?
I think it's a number of reasons. I think your first reason that you're going to start looking at is, you know, folks not completing our apprenticeship. We have a rigid apprenticeship. You know, the JATC has been around for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a code of excellence that we strive to be the best. Some situations, folks will fall short of that. I think the other part of that, and I'll be careful because I'm 30 years old, so I don't want to insult my whole generation, but it's tough work. I mean, it's blue collar work. You know, you're going to spend times out in the sun, times out in the cold, and so I think that has to do with it a little bit as well. You know, I believe in my generation. I believe we're the future. But sometimes we need to put a dip in and toughen up a little bit.
I fully agree with that, and obviously I'm big into social media, not just with this platform. While I was in college, I had 2 small businesses that I heavily used social media for before I sold them. But I do think there's kind of, I don't like to call it an over-glamorization of the trades, but I feel like there's a lot of over-glamorization of the trades online right now. Yes, you can make a lot of money, but usually that comes at the expense of a lot of other things that usually aren't out there. I think, especially with the younger generation, some of that has to do with it. I think they're sold one thing online and kind of punched in the face when they start, at least initially. I guess, Jason, what are your thoughts on all this, especially from the apprenticeship portion?
I'll say this. I think one of the things I think we could do better is how we treat each other on job sites. To Jared's point, I think it is a tough trade.
It is.
I'm not an electrician by trade. I'm a journeyman technician, a half-watt, as they call us. I don't do the same type of heavy lifting that the electricians do. They have a different skill set. I was a pipe fitter in a former life.
Oh, wow.
So I understand building systems. I understand how that type of stuff works. And I will say from the time I was a little boy, my dad owned his own business. I noticed one thing that survives across trades and is true of every job site. We expect people to be tough. We treat them a little tougher than we should. I think we need to focus on making sure that we support each other, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Some people need a pat on the shoulder. Some people need a good-natured ribbing. But I think sometimes we expect people to endure more than they should.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things we can do as union members and as people in general, and that is to build a better pathway forward for the people that come after us.
Absolutely.
I fully agree with that.
Everybody up.
I think it,
life should be for the people that come after us in our apprenticeship and our unions. We should take care of the books. We should do those type of things to make sure that they don't endure what we did. And just because I had to endure something doesn't mean somebody else should either. I think that's a significant reason why we lose folks from our apprenticeship is they just don't feel valued. They feel like labor. They feel like a back. They feel like a shovel. They feel like a tool. And I don't think we do anybody any favors by treating them that way.
I fully agree with that, and that's not just the like the electrical side of things. I would say that's across all trades, across union, non-union. I fully agree with that, and I think had you said that 20 years ago, you'd probably be chased around with a pitchfork right now. So,
Probably.
yeah. What's something about the industry, union or non-union, that people don't want to say out loud but needs to be said? And I mean, you can pick either the union or non-union side, or if you want to do both, that's cool. But yeah, what's something about the industry, union or non-union, that people don't want to say out loud but needs to be said?
I'd say mental health.
That's a huge one.
You know, I know we lost members last year, and it's tough. That's not a union non-union deal. That's an industry situation. You know, ultimately, blue-collar workers were expected to put on our work boots every single day. It doesn't matter what's going on. If mom died or dad died, and, you know, whatever we're going through as human beings, we're still expected to produce. And so
That's
to kind
very
of piggyback off what Jason was saying, we need to talk about mental health.
I fully agree with that. Jason, I guess, are you in the same alignment, or I guess is there something?
Yep. We put out challenge coins, T-shirts. We do all that stuff with mental health awareness type of items, and we like to say it's okay to not be okay. So I'm absolutely in Jared's corner when he says that. We need to focus on that, make sure we're taking care of each other, and finding people resources or being a resource in the event that that's what's needed as well. So call me at midnight. I might have an angry wife yelling at me in the background, but we're going to sit outside on my patio and we're going to talk until you're not comfortable talking to me anymore. So
That's and it's important to note. I don't know the exact statistics or anything like that, but I believe construction as a whole is one of the top five not leading, but one of the top five industries of suicide out of all professions out there. So it holds a negative stigma, but it's a stigma. I wouldn't say it's a stigma. It's something that definitely needs to be talked about more, and something people should be less ashamed, or they shouldn't be ashamed at all of seeking out help. I think that's the biggest thing. There's a stigma about asking for help as a grown man, and I think it's screwed up. That's where I'll leave that. 5 to 10 years from now, are electricians in a better position than today? 5 to 10 years from now, are electricians in a better position than today, or are we falling behind, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think electrical is the future, man. The whole entire world is going towards robotics and automation, and someone's got to help wire the robots. So,
well, I guess I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, what are both of your guys' opinions on like low voltage and control work? Because obviously that still kind of falls on. Well, I say kind of. It still falls under like our scope of work, but. What are your thoughts on that in comparison to, like, I guess, what the traditional electrician's doing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Go ahead. Half watt.
I think there's a place in the world for everybody. I think we can manage the trade in a responsible way to make sure that all of our members are represented well. In terms of the future, I see an awful lot of stuff using smaller and smaller wires these days.
That's very true.
And I think one of the most important things, from my perspective, that we can do is make sure that no matter what happens, we always travel the world together.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't leave any classification or any professional behind. I don't know, man. That's tough because there's so much work that the electricians do that the limited energy folks don't do. And in the same aspect, I think sometimes we need to make sure that we honor that, focus on that, and do a good job making sure that, I don't know, man, again, it's just a tough question. I just make sure we all travel together is the best way I can put it. Make sure that we're all in it together, and let's stay in it together.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that's very important. And this is going to be the final question. If someone's watching this who's on the fence about being union or non-union, what's the strongest argument against the union that actually holds some weight, and how do you honestly respond to it without sugarcoating anything?
Ooh, that's a good question. One of the things I like to tell people about a union is sometimes you lose the vote.
That's true.
Sometimes you don't win an argument. Sometimes the temperature in the room is not the temperature you like.
It's
not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy to be really passionate about something, really keyed up about something, spun up, as we like to say, and to have a significant number of people in a room vote against what you're passionate about.
That's very true.
One of the things I like to tell people is, regardless of how all of that stuff works, regardless of how the votes shake out, we have another vote next month. You get to continue engaging in that process. You continue to have a voice. You continue to have a vote. And remember, unions are a democracy. It's
That's
a simple, first past the goalpost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't win this one, win the next one, and do what it takes to build support for your cause or for your opinion. And you'll be surprised at what happens when you go out there with the mindset is that you want support from your brothers and sisters, and you want to build it, you want to work for it, you don't just want to demand it. So I tell people that sometimes you lose, but you always have a chance to keep fighting.
That's very true. Jared, do you have, I guess, a different perspective, or would you say that kind of summarizes your thoughts?
You know, a lot of what gets brought up, especially the newer folks that come in that might have been on the fence, but they decided to try it, is the local politics. And we're not talking big government politics, red versus blue issues. We're talking about sitting in a meeting room, you know, for 2 or 3 hours on a Thursday night and, you know, having some headbutting happening.
Yeah.
And to me, you know, I always come at them and say that's democracy at its best. You know, you talk about big government, you talk about, you know, city governments. It's hard for one person to have a voice. But when you
That's
go into
true.
a union meeting room, you know you're going to have a chance to talk. And it doesn't matter if you've been in the IBEW for 3 days, 30 years, your vote and your voice is still the same.
That's very true, and I think that's something a lot of members don't realize, especially the younger or newer members. But yeah, that's a big thing that we have the opportunity to exercise. And even though it is something we have the ability to exercise, I feel like even a lot of members still don't exercise it. So it's interesting because a lot of people want to scream about or get online and talk about change, but when it actually comes to making a change, everyone wants to stay radio silent typically. So, I mean, you can ask, but you also have to be willing to put in a little effort along the way. So.